Welcome to this week's edition of New York Now. I'm Dan Clark. The race for governor got a little more complicated this week on the Republican side with the late entry of businessman Harry Wilson. You might remember Wilson from 2010 when he ran against state controller Tom DiNapoli. He came closer to winning statewide office that year than any other Republican has in the last 4 election cycles. And since then, Republicans in New York have been trying to get him to run again, but for governor. So imagine their surprise when Wilson announced his campaign this week, 8 months after the party already picked its presumptive nominee, Congressman Lee Zeldin. But Zeldin had his own big announcement this week. He picked NYPD Commanding Officer Allison Esposito as his running mate. She'll now seek the Republican nomination for lieutenant governor, and she's already taking aim at Albany, blaming Democrats for the state's problems.
One-party rule in Albany has driven our state to the brink of no return, and it is critical that we elect Republican leadership to the executive branch, but also to break these supermajorities in the Senate and Assembly.
But Zeldin and Esposito have a long road ahead if they're going to beat Hochul in November. That's according to a new poll from Siena College this week. Let's get into it with John Campbell from WNYC and Gothamist. John, thank you as always.
Thank you for having me, Dan.
A fun time polls are when we get an update in these races for governor. So first I want to talk about Kathy Hochul and her primary. So like past elections, she's facing a primary. This time she's facing a primary, as we've told our audience many times, from New York City Public Advocate Jumaane Williams and then Congressman Tom Suozzi. She has a very wide lead ahead in that race. Can Jumaane or Suozzi make up that ground going into the June primary, do you think, based on past elections?
Well, listen, we're a little less than 4 months away. A lot can happen, sure, but this is a big lead. It's 46% for Kathy Hochul, 17% for Jumaane Williams on her left, and 9% for Tom Suozzi on her right. And she is trying to occupy that more moderate lane among Democrats, and it's so far she has positioned herself as the front runner. She's raised more than $20 million. That is a lot of money. That is a record-breaking amount of money.
It's so much money.
Period.
I can't believe that she raised that much money.
And money doesn't necessarily translate to votes, but it is a big deal because it allows you to air advertisements. It allows you to reach constituencies that you might not otherwise be unable to reach. And she has the power of incumbency, too. She is more well-known than her opponents by the very virtue of her being in the governor's office right now. And that's something that helps her against her Democratic opponents, and it's something that certainly will help her against her Republican opponents.
So we don't have any polling on Kathy Hochul versus a Republican because obviously the Republican nominee hasn't been officially chosen. They'll choose it at the nominating convention next week. But we do have some polling here in the Siena poll about the Republican candidates in the primary and their favorability and their name recognition. So the thing that jumps out at me, and this has jumped out at me in the last Siena poll as well, is that nobody really knows who these Republican candidates are. So then what's their path to even challenging Hochul when she has the bully pulpit of the governor's office and these Republicans are unrecognizable?
She has the bully pulpit of the governor's office, and she also has the advantage of 2-to-1 Democratic state, more than 2-to-1 Democratic state.
Right.
But there's a lot of time for Republicans to introduce themselves to the electorate. You have a handful of Republicans right now. You've got Lee Zeldin, the congressman from Long Island. You've got Rob Astorino, who ran for governor before. You've got Andrew Giuliani, who seems to be the most well-known of any of the Republican candidates based on polling, but that could be a function of his famous father, Rudy Giuliani. And then this week you did have an interesting twist here, which is a guy by the name of Harry Wilson, who is a business consultant, a former hedge fund manager, a wealthy individual who previously ran for office in 2010 and has shown some level of willingness to put his own money into the race. And money can be an equalizer. So Harry Wilson joined the race this week. He is going to be at the convention, or at least his people are going to be at the convention. I don't know if he'll make the ballot that way, but certainly he can try to petition his way on after. And he could be a player here. He could be.
Do you think that anybody else gets on the ballot at the convention? We're all just looking to our crystal ball here. We don't know. We have no idea.
Well, so to get on the ballot, you need to get at least 25% of the weighted vote of the Republican State Committee. And so far, I mean, Lee Zeldin seems to be cleaning up among leaders. He's got endorsements from 60 of 62 county Republican leaders. The only ones that haven't endorsed him are Westchester, who's backing Rob Astorino, their hometown candidate, and Lewis County, which is backing their local sheriff, who's running a long shot bid. It doesn't necessarily mean that nobody else will make that 25% mark, but generally speaking, committee members follow their county leaders. And if Lee Zeldin has 60 of 62 counties, that means that he's well on his way to being the only one on the ballot.
You know, something else in this poll that we were talking about before we got on the air is this striking statistic. I don't have it right in front of me, but 91% of voters say that crime is a priority for them. I think that
It said crime is either a very serious issue or a somewhat serious issue.
Yeah, so how do you think that affects this year in the legislature and the elections? I imagine it must mean that the lawmakers are going to do something crime-related. Whether that looks like tweaks to bail reform, probably not, but I don't know where else they go with it.
Well, on the legislature side, you see the legislature, the Democratic-led legislature, facing pressure from the Democratic mayor of New York City to change the bail laws that they just changed a few years ago. And the leadership is signaling that they don't intend on doing that. So whether or not something happens there, it depends on what kind of pressure they face from the public, what kind of pressure they face at the ballot box. That said, it is going to be an issue in the gubernatorial campaign. The Republicans are going to make it an issue. Tom Suozzi is trying to make it an issue in the Democratic primary. And it is, that poll number is really telling because we know that historically crime rates are below where they were decades ago.
Right.
But if people feel like crime is a very serious issue or a somewhat serious issue, that's really all that matters in terms of electoral politics. So you see candidates trying to exploit that. You see candidates trying to make that their issue. That's part of the reason why Lee Zeldin picked Allison Esposito, a decades-long member of the NYPD, as his running mate. They're trying to be law and order candidates and make that the major issue of the campaign.
Which I'm wondering, it was certainly effective in last year's elections. I mean, we can't say one reason or another definitively why somebody wins an election or why somebody loses an election, but we certainly saw Republicans clean house on Long Island for the county executive seat and the DA seat.
Attorney.
Yeah, so I think that their messaging has been really effective. We'll see if it continues to be effective this year, but we will leave it there. John Campbell from WNYC and Gothamist, thank you.
Thank you.